So, what is your view of failure? What do you think about failure? How do you think about failure? Do you obsess about failure? Welcome. If you are joining me live, it is a good day. I hope you're having a great day. This show is a little bit different. I don't do a lot of lives, and you might be thinking, well, what the heck did Mark do to his background? Is he using a new green screen? No, I don't actually use a green screen. If you've seen my videos in the past, you've seen the lighted background, and that's a real background. This one is too. You can see this is actually my boardroom, my conference room, and I usually spend most of my days working here, working on the whiteboards that are posted all over, and just going through different pieces of research. I actually decided to move out here a little bit to do something different. I'm working on a different project right now. And I was like, well, what the heck? I'm just going to go live on YouTube and share some of the research that I have been going through recently. This is going to be a short video. I don't have anything super scripted or really just kind of a random thought, a couple thoughts I wanted to give you on the psychological impacts of certain things, of how you think around failure and how you think sometimes like, man, I'm just not motivated. How can I move the needle, especially when I'm not feeling motivated? If you have ever been in the entrepreneurial position where you're like, oh my gosh, I was super fired up at the beginning and that wanes over time, right? Has anybody else experienced that? Well, I know I have, especially when I have lots of different ideas. Every time I get out of the shower, I feel like I want to have start a new business. So fortunately, that has my ideas have not really slowed down, but my acting on those various ideas, I have found a couple of ways to mitigate those distractions and just chasing shiny objects all the time, because that just doesn't get me traction. It doesn't get me where I want to go. Being vision focused certainly helps. And we're going to come back to that here in just a quick second. But your view of failure is really important in terms of how you view failure. And many people, it's really hard not to have a negative view of failure. I will fully recognize that there's been times that I have been through some really, really tough events, especially like back in 2009 when I had built up a real estate portfolio, had built it up to about $6.5 million worth of real estate, and watched it all implode in about 8 months. And then by the end of that 8 months, I'm sitting on a pile of wreckage and was still managed to keep about $1.5 million. But imagine spending 10 years on something and then have most of it ripped away from you. I was able to keep some. I was able to actually rebuild, and I'm significantly healthier now, but it was just a horrendous time to go through. And it was really hard to look at the positive side of failure in that moment. So it's really interesting, though, that when you can reframe this thing and say, okay, what can I learn from this? And I learned a tremendous amount from that. And it's really one of the main reasons why when I look at what I wrote in The Time Wealthy Investor, which was my first book, and that's a real estate book. And for those of you who are interested in buy and hold investing, I would encourage you to look at The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. I am considering doing a rewrite of that because there are certain things that have evolved in there, but that's mostly related to some internet things and things that have gone on in the property management space. But it's still a very viable and still very relevant book. But all of that was in that book was a book of all the things that I did wrong, and really was trying to help the reader to not make the same mistakes that I did. So I was able to turn that around and really demonstrate, like, hey, you can get a lot of things wrong and still be pretty successful on the other side. But it's interesting that when you're looking at two different mindsets, and researchers were looking at different types of mindsets from a fixed mindset versus a growth-oriented mindset. And people who have a fixed mindset just overall tend to struggle just in adaptation as the world evolves. And that's not surprising, but it's also really interesting about how children can adopt a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset in how their parents view and experience failure. If their parents view and experience failure as a negative thing, that there's nothing to be learned from failure, that life is always against them, and and that every like bad experiences always tend to be more permanent than they truly are, children will also tend to adopt that mindset. They will look at failure as a bad thing. So for those of you who are, especially for those of you who are parents, especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs that are really hard on yourselves, it's again, it's what are you teaching your kids? You're teaching your kids that failure is not a good thing. Failure is not anything that necessarily to be learned from. And I know it's really easy to say, but really and truly, how are you responding when something doesn't go your way? Truly, you might be experiencing, like you're mad, you're upset, but really on the other side of this, are you really able to be use that as a growth orientation and say, well, okay, it didn't work out the way I wanted. What can I learn from this? The other thing is, and I want to be, so it's not just necessarily your view of failure, but how others view your failure. But one other thing I want to leave you with, and this is a piece of just a piece of research I really haven't unpacked, but for those of you especially who go through periods of not just feeling motivated, it's interesting that this group of researchers had looked at the entrepreneurial fire that precedes the entrepreneurial doing, right? So this entrepreneurial spirit versus the entrepreneurial behavior, and which drives which. And it was interesting because this group of researchers says, well, yeah, but there's plenty of people who have entrepreneurial fire, that entrepreneurial, go get them attitude, but it dies off. It drops off. So it was really interesting when I really looked at the type of research that they were doing, and it was interesting how much they noticed that behavior actually drives attitude, not the other way around. That attitude often wanes, but when you have an entrepreneurial drive, when you have that entrepreneurial behavior, that's the behavior that's actually driving the attitude, not so much relying on the attitude to drive the behavior. So there's just days that when you just don't feel like doing the work. Like today, I got up and I was tired. I did not sleep super well last night. Lily was up a lot, and I didn't really feel like doing my research this morning. But guess what? I got in here. I got settled in by 7, had some coffee, really wasn't feeling it, but 30 minutes into it, I was in the motion, and I really got some really good research, got some good learning in today. And that is just how things got started. So I really would encourage you that sometimes it's the behavior that moves the attitude. And oftentimes, according to this research, it's often the behavior that drives the attitude. So if you don't feel like doing it, just start small. Give yourself, say, hey, look, I'm going to do it for 11 minutes, and then I can stop after 11 minutes. And that usually is enough to keep you going. And that's exactly what I did. I said, I'm going to do this for 11 minutes. And after 11 minutes, if I feel like stopping, I will. And I did the first time, and I closed my eyes for a few minutes. I started back up. I gave myself another 11 minutes to try it, and I got right back into it. So anyway, that would be what I would suggest, especially if you're just not feeling that particular day. All right, that is all I have for today. If you would be interested in joining us, I don't have I don't have that ready. Oh my gosh. I'll just put this up really quick. So this is the Time Wealthy Advantage group. If you would like to join us in that room, it's for you Facebook types. That room is for folks who like this sort of stuff and this sort of material. There's no charge for it. It's our Facebook group. The link is in the description. Also, if you would like a signed copy, if you're domestic, United States, and you'd like a signed copy of the Time Wealthy Advantage, there's a link in there for where you can purchase that, and you also get a 45-minute coaching session with that, and we can discuss really whatever it is that you would like. And I will pull those off. I'm starting to get really busy. I'm starting to get an influx of a lot of people, so those will last as long as they last. All right, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time.